Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would review a video or two by a couple of channels that I like to review here and there. One of the videos that I'm going to review from is going to be that of the new media slash LDBC channel, Mr. AKHi TV. And another one is going to be that of Mr. BOXINGEGO. Two of these channels, of course, are both new media based, so we know that they're both going to have a certain narrative that they like to play afoot. But of course, they are also, or at least Ego is going to bring up some points that I also think are a little bit relevant. Anyways, of course, for those of you that recently seen that of the Oleksandr Usyk versus Dubois fight, you know that, at least according to some people, there was a little bit of controversy within that of the fifth round, because a lot of people believe that Dubois, that he ended up getting robbed of his victory within this fight. Do I personally believe that? No, I don't. Of course, for those of you that don't know what happened, Dubois landed a punch that at first looked like a low blow, and then on the replay, it was completely landed on the belt line. Now, the thing is with me, at least from, just the way that I look at it, because certain referees, depending on how they judge a fight, to certain referees, that would not be constituted as a low blow. To certain referees, that would be constituted as a low blow. In my view, was the punch a little bit low? Yes, in my view, it was slightly low. Now, if you counted that as a legal blow, I can't necessarily judge you, because there's a lot of punches that landed in fights like that that would have been counted as legal. However, there is a certain amount of punches that also would have been thrown like that that would have also been counted as illegal. Because as the punches you can see right there, it looks a little bit slightly below that of the belt line, at least from this angle. Now, in other angles, it looks slightly above, so we don't really know how much it impacted it. But at the end of the day, and I always stated this, if something is borderline, no matter what the situation is, you can't really blame whichever direction it goes in. And when a punch is looked at as a borderline low blow, something that could have been looked at as a legal punch or something that could have been looked at as a low blow, you can't really get too angry about it unless you had a narrative afoot beforehand about it, quote unquote, being low. Because I promise you, if Oleksandr Usyk was, a black American fighter from that of the USA, they would not be mentioning this. They'd be saying, well, it was a little bit low, or it was at least borderline. But the reason why they're going to run with this narrative of it being a quote unquote robbery, which I cannot agree with, is once again their job is to make sure that Usyk, fighters like Usyk or Inoue or Fury or Canelo Alvarez, that they don't make the top of the pound for pound list or the all-time great spots in the first place. That's mainly what their objective is. And that's why I like to review their videos, because they spread a lot of misinformation, But let's get straight into it. Let's see overall what he has to say.
Before he re-engages in this fight.
This could be a turning point right here for Dubois.
Here's another
right
angle,
here,
Sammy.
another angle, yep. That's right. That looks like it's right on the belt line. That looks like it's right on the belt line, Tess. That doesn't look too deep down on that cup there.
You can hear the reaction from the crowd, which is a very pro-Usyk crowd. As Louis Pabon, veteran referee from Puerto Rico.
Tess, that looked like it was right on the bladder, Tess. I'm telling you. That was right on the bladder, on the belt line.
Over 3.5 minutes of arrest to this point for Oleksandr Usyk. Again, this the low blow.
Here it is. Let's see. Oh, it's right on that. It looks like it's right on that target, right on the belt line of Usyk. Dubois knows that was a legal shot. He knows it was legal.
I'll say this, and in my view, once again, if I were a referee, just in my personal view, that would be counted as a low blow shot. I don't mind a punch, in my view, that lands on the belt line as long as it's up on the upper half of the belt. But this was directly right in the middle, directly right in the middle of the belt line when it came down to it, meaning that the glove was covering up the whole entire belt line, and some of it possibly even going below a little bit to the low blow spot. So yes, in my view, it should have been counted as a low blow. Now, for those of you that counted it as a legal punch, that's up to you. Like I said, there are certain referees that would have counted that as a legal punch. There are certain referees that would have counted that as a low blow. But like I said, kind of like when you watch a fight, when a fight is super duper close, like that of the Vasily Lomachenko and Devin Haney fight, you can't complain that it's a quote unquote robbery, because neither fighter was so dominant to the point to where they clearly could have pulled off the decision. And it's kind of the same thing here. It was not clear enough to be a major low blow, like when Zab Judah landed that low blow punch against Floyd Mayweather, or when, possibly some other punches happened. But it wasn't, on the belt line, up around the belt line like some other punches I've seen. So like I said, when something is borderline, no matter what the situation is, you can't really, get mad whichever direction it goes in.
He's going right back down to the kitchen. Like
A fifth round, Timmy, that some will look back on and say, would Oleksandr Usyk been knocked out if not for the referee saying that was a low blow?
Congratulations to Usyk for receiving the robbery of the year, since Dubois knocked out Usyk with a body shot where he put him on the canvas for 3 minutes. However, the referee...
Well, this is also another reason why I can't call it a robbery. And the reason why I can't call it a robbery is because Usyk was expecting that punch to be called a low blow. And we don't know how quick Usyk would have gotten up had it been called a regular punch and had the referee been counting. Now, who knows? Maybe he wouldn't have gotten up. It did look like the punch did seriously daze him. But we never know. Usyk is a very skilled veteran fighter. And on top of that, he seems decently tough. So I would expect that he would at least attempt to get up. Whether he would have got knocked down again and knocked out within the round, who knows? But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, that's why I cannot call it a robbery. Because Usyk, especially when he heard that low blow, he knew that he could stay on the floor as long as he wanted to. So once again, I can't call it a robbery because that's what the call was. And that's not really Oleksandr Usyk's fault. It just is what it is.
ruled the knockdown as a low blow instead of a clean body shot that was right on the belt line. For the people that are not informed, in the sport of boxing...
Now, there has been certain knockdowns in the past or something like that where they were either not counted as knockdowns or they were counted as knockdowns, and I thought that they were very poor calls. Do I think that this was one of those calls? No, not necessarily. And once again, the reason why that was is because this was a borderline punch. I can't really get mad at a borderline punch that could have went either way, being called as a low blow or as a legal shot. I can't really get mad at it. Especially with the referee, he's not going to be able to see everything from that of a certain angle. It just is what it is. Now, when you're talking about certain, knockdowns that could have been counted as knockdowns or, clearly weren't knockdowns, one of the fights that I watched where a knockdown did occur, that in my view clearly was not a knockdown was Manny Pacquiao versus Marco Antonio Barrera in the first round, where Pacquiao was allegedly knocked down. And it clearly was a very poor call because it was very clear not even a single hand landed on Manny Pacquiao. He just tripped over his feet. Now when we talk about a knockdown that in my view should have been counted as a knockdown, in my view it was Floyd Mayweather Jr. against that of Zab Judah, at least from what I remember. Now maybe their feet got tangled up, but every angle that I've seen it from, at least when I watched it, several years earlier, it looked like Zab Judah hit him with the right hand and it knocked Floyd off balance and his glove touched the canvas, but it was not called a knockdown. Of course, Floyd came back to win that fight, but either way, when it comes down to it, I've seen worse calls than this.
Body shots on the belt line are legal, since fighters have the belt line.
Well, shots on the belt line are legal, especially if they're on the upper half. But once you get to that bottom half to below, then a certain amount of referees, yes, they'll call that, possibly illegal. And for those of you that pay attention to the fights, certain referees will say, anything up here on this half is legal, anything below on this half is illegal. So what are they saying? Sometimes anything, depending on the way they judge things, if they catch you landing a punch on the lower half of the belt line, it will be counted as illegal. Okay, so once again, that's why in my view, this punch was slightly low. But if you counted it as a legal punch, I don't necessarily mind, because once again, there are certain referees that wouldn't have counted that either.
Above their belly button. So it's universally known, if you hit someone on the belt line, that's a legal shot. So
right, but Usyk's trunks also are decently low compared to a certain amount of other fighters. They're not very high trunks, and I noticed the same thing with Vasily Lomachenko. And Usyk, for a future reference, he might have to pull his trunks even higher, or maybe that's a tactic by him. Maybe that's a tactic just in case if he does get hit, around that area. You know, maybe overall is the dude low. I don't know. Or maybe it's just the way that he wears his trunks. I don't know. But either way, like I said, it was a borderline punch. I can't get mad. In my view, I would also count it as a low blow.
When Dubois put Usyk on the floor for more than 3 minutes, that should have been ruled a knockout. Because even...
Well, no, it shouldn't have been ruled as a knockout because, once again, the call was that it was a low blow and it was a punch that could have went either way. Now, if we're talking about a fight to where clearly there was a flop when it came down to it, and you could argue about the changing of a result. Now, this isn't boxing, but in the UFC, for example, you know, there was 2 fights that I can think of. Actually, 2 of them were knees, I believe. There was a fight between Chris Weidman and Gegard Mousasi, the Italian fighter, I believe. You know, and he kneed Chris Weidman, and the rule is that you cannot knee them when their hands are on the ground, you know, or both fists are on the ground. Well, Gegard Mousasi pulled him up and he kneed him right in the face. Chris Weidman clearly tried to sell it when it came down to it. And Gegard Mousasi, it was clear that he pulled his hands off the canvas. Chris Weidman obviously knew that his hands were off the canvas, but he tried to sell it anyway, and it was counted as a knockout. And I agree with that call. You know, another example of this would be Paul Daly versus Josh Koscheck. For those of you that remember that fight in the UFC, Paul Daly landed an alleged illegal knee. In the replay, it was showed that it didn't even land. Unfortunately, that fight result was not overturned. But basically, you know, certain examples like that, we can, you know, in my view, overturn those. Unfortunately for boxing, they don't really have the automatic replay like that of UFC. They don't have those type of rules. Now, certain people may believe that boxing can benefit from it, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that maybe boxing could benefit with that of an immediate replay like that of the tennis sport, with that of, you know, the Hawkeye or whatever it's called, or that of the UFC. I certainly think that they can possibly benefit from that. You know, the referees could benefit from that, and then they can make a call right after the round ends. You know, but you know, unfortunately, boxing does not have that. And like I said, it was a borderline punch anyway.
Stevie Wonder could see that shot was right on the belt line. However, because of this corrupted referee, he ended up robbing Dubois of a lifetime achievement. This referee should be charged for...
No, he didn't rob Dubois of anything. Once again, when something is borderline, you cannot get necessarily mad at that situation. It just is what it is. You know, once again, like a lot of people, when they take a look at certain fights and the fighter that they wanted to win did not end up winning, like that of the Lomachenko versus Devin Haney fight, like a lot of people like to call it a quote-unquote robbery. It wasn't a robbery. It's just that it was a fight that was very close to calling that could have went either way. So you can't call a fight like that a robbery, or Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin 2, you know, or Oleksandr Usyk versus Canelo Alvarez, or certain other fights that, you know, Jose Luis Castillo versus Floyd Mayweather Jr. None of those fights were robberies. If you want to talk about a fight that was a clear-cut robbery, I think of Chavez Sr. versus Pernell Sweepy Whitaker. I think of Oleksandr Usyk versus Paul Williams. Those are the type of fights that I think of. I think of Timothy Bradley versus Manny Pacquiao the first go-around. Those are fights, in my view, that were clear-cut robberies. It was very similar here to where this, you know, if we were to compare this punch to a fight necessarily, it wouldn't have been a fight that would have been super-duper clear. And to add another fight to the robbery list, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 1, when it comes down to it, in my view anyway. If this punch was a fight, it would have been a split decision fight. A fight that could have went either way. Like I said, it was a borderline punch.
Crime. Because it's a crime that he committed against Dubois. And Usyk, on the other hand, should be given the Best Actor Award of the year. Perhaps of the century. I mean, Usyk milked the heck out of that fake low blow as he took the entire 5-minute timeout. Nevertheless, surprisingly, Dubois actually did better than Anthony Joshua. He came to fight, and he had...
That's very interesting. Once again, haven't I already told you people that AKHi TV and Dante's Boxing Nation and a lot of these pro-blackities, you know, or these guys from the LDBC and new media channels, that they don't personally believe in a lot of the stuff that they say. He said that Daniel Dubois did better than Anthony Joshua. Now, either A, AKHi TV is just that delusional and doesn't know how to score a fight, or B, he doesn't really truly believe what he's saying, and he's just trying to promote something to the masses or to his fan base when it comes down to it. Because Isn't this the same guy that claimed that he thought Anthony Joshua won the rematch against Oleksandr Usyk? You know, that shows you his scoring abilities if that's what he truly believes. But this goes to show me that AKHi TV, he's not as dumb as what overall he tries to propose himself to be. That he's doing a lot of this shit overall to promote certain narratives when it comes down to it for whatever reason. All right, apparently he did better than Anthony Joshua overall, but but Anthony Joshua allegedly won the rematch. That makes no sense. Because in my personal view, Daniel Dubois, he won 1 round in this fight. 1 round. I gave him round 3. Other people would have gave him more rounds. A lot of other people said that he had a good showing. I do not personally believe that he had a good showing. Just in my personal view. And a lot of people are also saying that he quit, and I would have to agree. He also quit in the Joe Joyce fight. Now, I give him a little bit of credit in that fight because he had a broken orbital eye bone. And I'm not a guy that likes to go after people that had a broken orbital eye bone because I'm not in the ring. I'm not the one getting punched. And that's a serious injury. That, of course, no one wants to possibly go blind or fuck up their vision. So I understand. But he did quit in this fight.
Heat behind his punches. Dubois didn't come to box Usyk. He came to fight Usyk. And that's exactly what he did.
That's what you have to do with Usyk because you're not going to outbox him. Unless you're that of Tyson Fury, you know, who's one of the more skilled fighters on the planet. And in my view, one of the top 500-pound fighters, debatably. You're not going to outbox him. Tyson Fury is the only one within that weight division that has the pure skill and pure talent to possibly outbox Usyk. You know, it just is what it is. I mean, Jared Anderson, you know, he's kind of on the come up, but I don't really know how good he's going to be, so I'll have to see how good he will be. But we'll see. You know, so Danny Dubois kind of had the right approach, but he was just too tentative. He was too one-dimensional of a fighter. Usyk had the better feet. He had the better head movement. He had the better experience. He was just the all-around much more skilled fighter. But after this performance, especially with some of the weaknesses that Usyk showed of defending to the body and a little bit of getting hurt to the body, very similar to that of Lomachenko against Teofimo Lopez, I'm going to be very interested to see how he reacts if he possibly faces Deontay Wilder or somebody else.
We all knew if Dubois was going to win this fight, he had to do it early on since he has stamina issues. And would you believe that's exactly what Dubois did?
Well, does Dubois really have stamina issues? And I'm not saying that he doesn't. But to me, Danny Dubois, now maybe he did have stamina issues. But to me, it's just that Danny Dubois is just really not the fighter that many people called him out to be. And I've pretty much seen this from day one. He's very stiff. He's a guy that does not have that great of feet. He does not have, great feet. He's very flat-footed at times. He does not have great head movement. He does not change levels to a great degree. He's basically a worse version of Anthony Joshua. That is not a fighter that is ever going to make it to the top of the ranks. And I know Usyk, he tried to give him a very great supporting speech after the fight. And, I think that it was a great thing that Usyk did, and I tend to agree with him to a slight degree. But you can just tell which certain fighters have it and which certain fighters don't. And I'm sorry, but Danny Dubois, he does not have it.
Managed to knock out Usyk with a body shot. However, the referee ended up robbing Dubois of a lifetime achievement. He robbed Dubois without a gun.
Didn't I say overall that they would say that Usyk got knocked out? Once again, they're going to use this fight, as I already stated and as I accurately predicted when it came down to it, that, they're going to use this to say, well, we can no longer have Usyk within our top 5 pound per pound because he really robbed Danny Dubois and blah, 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 all this sort of shit. Once again, they're going to try and use this to promote more of their agenda.
He cheated this man. To make matters worse, after Usyk was given the full 5 minutes to recover, the referee threatened Dubois. If he goes to the body like that again, he will disqualify him. And after Dubois was robbed...
Yes, because once again, it was a borderline low blow.
...of his moment, the fight went on to the later rounds, which we all knew if the fight goes to the later rounds, Dubois doesn't have the stamina to keep up with Usyk, which that's exactly what...
Yes, and that's exactly why AKHi TV is so emotional about this. Because he says, God damn it, Usyk almost ended up losing this fight. Now I gotta keep hearing about this white boy when it comes down to it, about being one of the top 5 pound per pound fighters. Damn it, we almost had another dude to cross off our list.
ended up taking place, Usyk knocked out Dubois with a jab, actually, in the later rounds. Now, I want you guys to pay attention to the commentators, Tessitore, Mark Kriegel, and Timothy Bradley, how there was no real complaining about this robbery. They acted like this happens every day or something, as if
there was actually any bias with the commentators, I actually thought that it was more biased towards that of Daniel Dubois. I thought that they were trying to make him sound a lot better than what he actually was. They were saying that he was super in the fight and that he was getting good work in. I don't know how, because Usyk was pretty much beating his ass for the majority of the time. I mean, I don't want to say beating his ass, but he was clearly winning the fight.
the referee didn't.
And even the announcers like Joe Tessitore and both Timothy Bradley, they said, well, there might be a little bit of controversy because I looked on the belt line. Both of them said that. So I don't really know what AKHi TV is really talking about.
This cheat Dubois of becoming a champion. You best believe if the roles was reversed, if Dubois wasn't a fighter on the coincidental list and Usyk wasn't a fighter on the hope list, if it was the other way around, man, Tessitore, Mark Kriegel, and Uncle Bradley would have been screaming and complaining from the top of their...
Uncle Bradley, basically overall claiming that Timothy Bradley is an Uncle Tom. Once again, it's very interesting to me, how these LDBC and new media guys, AKHi TV is basically invited to the barbecue when it comes down to it. He's allowed to act as, this figure, who's basically a wannabe black caricature when it comes down to it. Who's in a way making fun of certain black people in a way when it comes down to it. Isn't it so interesting? As long as you say whatever they want you to say. Isn't that interesting?
lungs.
Because AKHi TV is not even a black man. And a certain amount of these guys, none of them get offended when he calls Timothy Bradley an Uncle Tom. And don't get me wrong, that's not me saying that I agree with everything that Timothy Bradley says when it comes down to it. But once again, AKHi TV, some of the statements that he makes, in my view, he really does not have overall the right to say some of the things that he says.
Matter of fact, they probably would have had to end up jumping the referee right there on the spot. However, because Usyk has the complexion for the connection, they acted like this was the norm. With the facts being laid out, drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe below. And to be continued on the next episode of AKHi TV. Peace out.
That's pretty much about it when it comes down to it for Mr. Wannabe Black Man AKHi TV when it comes down to it. Anyways, that's pretty much about it. But let's see what Mr. Boxing Ego also had to say, the more logical commentator of the two. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so now we're going to see what Mr. Boxing Ego has to say on the matter. Once again, I tend to like Boxing Ego a lot more than a lot of these other commentators. I think that he brings up a lot more intelligent points. Of course, he still is biased within his own right. But at least a lot of the times he'll make points that make sense. Anyways, let's get into it. Let's see what he has to say.
He quit. Daniel Dubois, he quit. I am very filled. Usyk just knocked out Daniel Dubois. Let's talk about it. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego in the back with some more boxing. Just watch Usyk versus Daniel Dubois. Usyk, he got the stoppage. It was a TKO stoppage in the 9th round. He remains the unified champion of the world. He had the crowd advantage, and he retains his titles. Now, in this video, I'm going to give you guys, like I always do in my post-fight breakdowns, make sure you subscribe. I'm going to give you the good.
I would have loved to have seen a prime fight between Evander Holyfield and Oleksandr Usyk. That would have been a great fight, because Usyk, in my view, would have been more technically sound in certain areas. But Evander Holyfield was very technically sound himself, and he probably would have had the slight athletic advantage, certainly the power advantage. It would have been very interesting.
The bad and the ugly. The good is Usyk, he was the favorite. He's the undefeated.
Or Usyk versus Mike Tyson. And I know a lot of people would say, oh, well, Mike Tyson would kill him and all sort of stuff because of the body shots. And listen, I like Mike Tyson, but at the end of the day, Mike Tyson never really beat anyone that was an all-time great fighter. The majority of the time when Mike Tyson was in the ring against all-time great level talent, he lost. And not only did he usually lose, he got dominated. So it just is what it is.
Beat guy. He's the guy with the belts. He retained his belts and his championship. So he can go towards bigger opportunities. Andy Ruiz and Deontay Wilder's, and of course Tyson Fury, undisputed, those types of fights. So congratulations to Usyk. It was a solid fight. You know, there were some things that were.
Well, in my view, it was mainly a solid performance. I don't think that it was really a great fight. I think that the quote unquote controversy, if you even want to call it that, kind of took a little bit away from it because I think Usyk was mainly winning the fight. Once again, I gave Danny Dubois 1 round in the fight. That was the 3rd round. Maybe you could argue 1 or 2 more rounds, but the majority of the rounds I thought clearly went to Usyk. And once that 6th round hit, Usyk was clearly starting to get over on him.
Frustrating, if you will, to me. And that's what I want to get into, the bad and the ugly. Let me start with the ugly. So the ugly was the referee. The ugly was the referee for show. Because the referee was, for my liking, he was too involved and he was intervening too much. And my thing is this, I feel.
Well, let me state this. I have to agree with Mr. Boxing Eagle a little bit there. And it isn't necessarily, once again, because of what happened in the 5th round, because like I said, that was a borderline punch. But Usyk very clearly was getting a little bit aggravated by some of those body shots. I mean, maybe they were a little bit more on the belt line than what I know. But at the end of the day, this is pro boxing, all right? And those are not illegal shots. Now, the one in the 5th round debatably was, but the other shots that I seen, they did not look like super duper low blows. And at the end of the day, the referee should have said, those are legal, all right? Those are legal. That's what he should have said. At least those ones were. So Usyk, it was very clear that he was a little bit vulnerable to the body. He was vulnerable to the body against AJ Anthony Joshua as well, and in some other fights. So it's not really as big of a revelation as what some people are saying. But once again, I would like to see him in a fight against Deontay Wilder or against another fighter that would be of higher caliber than that of Danny Dubois, like an Andrew Ruiz or something like that, where he'd probably be more prepared for it. And could Usyk prepare for defense to the body? You know, would he be able to adapt to it a little bit better? We'll see.
Like a referee should be like a silent.
I would love to see Oleksandr Usyk either versus Andrew Ruiz next, or maybe a Joe Joyce, someone like that.
Person like a Casper, and you should almost, they're there to make sure the rules are being followed. I get that. They're there being paid to do a job. I get that. But when it is not warranted or needed, you should almost, as a fan, you shouldn't even know that the referee is there unless absolutely needed. That's how I view the job of the referee.
I somewhat agree with you, Mr. Eagle, but let's also come up with similar standards, because once again, these are the same guys that love to bitch and moan. Remember about the Fury versus Deontay Wilder fight, where they said that, you know, Fury's blows were allegedly behind the head and all this other shit, and they said, where was the referee? You know, because the referee overall completely was in favor of Tyson Fury. So this is what I mean when I say that the LDBC and new media, that they're a victimization mentality cult, because they're fanboys of their favorite fighters, and every angle that they're going to be looking at is from a victimization mentality. It's going to be from a victimization mentality role. It's never going to be overall, well, that was more the fighter's fault. You know, when it comes down to it, if you want things in your life to go a certain way, you have to make sure that you're usually in complete control of things and not put it in the hands of other people. You have to make sure to be as dominant or as, you know, good as possible. You know, too many people in life are blame deflectors.
But for this fight with Usyk and Dubois,
and you will not get anywhere by being a blame deflector. You have to overall put, once again, the blame on yourself the majority of the time to be successful and to get more skilled within your abilities. Because the more you blame other people, the more you will not improve.
I knew the referee was there virtually every round because of little stuff that he was doing. So in round 5, Usyk got dropped. They called it, the referee, he has executive decision powers and like the veto power. He said it was a low blow. And this is why boxing should do instant replays. Because
I agree with that as well. Boxing should implement instant replays because of situations like this. And then it will be completely up to the referee and possibly other officials, you know, to observe whether that's something that is knockdown worthy or a low blow.
For real, that should have been a 10-8 round. And I knew it was going to be some BS after that, and that's exactly what happened. So it was a belt line shot. Usyk went down, and he's like grimacing in pain because he got hit with a nice body shot by a bigger guy, Daniel Dubois, and a guy who's a powerful puncher. So that really should have been a 10-8 round. The first angle they showed...
You could certainly debate that. Once again, in my view, the blow was a little bit low. But if you were to debate that it was a clean blow, I can't get mad at that either.
It was a little bit hard to see because it was from the backside, from Usyk's back, so you couldn't really see the action from the front. Pause. But they showed different angles in the telecast, and it was a belt line shot. Even Timothy Bradley, one of the ESPN commentators, said that he believed that that was kind of legal, like it was a fair game type of shot. But the referee allowed Usyk 5 minutes that you get when you get hit low. And let's not beat around the bush. Let's not play any games. I've seen tons of fights. You know, I want to say thousands, millions of fights or whatever. I know when somebody gets hit low and it's a whole different circumstance. Like usually when they get hit, it's like Zab Judah versus Cotto. Zab Judah was getting the best of Cotto, and then Cotto started going low. Or Anthony Peter.
Now, why overall did they bring up the Zab Judah versus Miguel Cotto situation? Because for those of you that don't remember that fight, the Miguel Cotto versus Zab Judah fight was a fight that was basically transferring Miguel Cotto to power in terms of one of the top fighters in the world. And when Zab Judah ended up getting low blowed in that fight, there was a lot of fans that claimed overall, oh, well, Zab Judah would have beat Miguel Cotto had it not been for the low blows. It wasn't until the low blows overall when Zab Judah was getting beat, when it came down to it. And who are those fans? The Pro Blackities, the Boxing Egos, the AKHi TVs, basically back then. All right, they were the excuse makers, the guys over who are blame deflectors. Once again, you will not get anywhere by blame deflecting your whole entire life. At some point in time, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, listen, certain things did not go the way that I wanted them to. But if I'm going to improve, if I'm going to get better, I have to put the blame upon myself. Now, don't get me wrong. There's going to be a certain amount of things that are not our fault, or sometimes we are going to get cheated. But just for that Miguel Cotto versus Zab Judah overall thing, the reason why low blows happen is because when Zab Judah would pull on Miguel Cotto's head or deflect some of his punches, they would deflect to the low blow spot. So they were not on purpose low blows when it came down to it. So that needed to be stated, because that was also a statement that many of the pro blacks, when it came down to, they tried to use, 15 years ago when that fight happened. And it's just not the case that they try to make it out to be. Now, when you want to talk about an actual low blow, that was clearly on purpose. Speaking of Zab Judah, talk about that Zab Judah versus Mayweather fight, because Zab Judah, when he was starting to get broken down incrementally later on in the fight, he threw a wicked uppercut right to Floyd Mayweather's, balls, basically, when it came down to it. That was a major low blow. And that cost, both sides actually to get in the ring and, scuffle a little bit, unfortunately.
Versus Brandon Rios, or a fight with Joseph Egbeko versus Abner Mares. And Abner Mares...
Yes, the Joseph Egbeko versus Abner Mares fight, that was probably the worst example of low blows that I've ever seen. Or the best example of low blows I've ever seen, if you want to put it that way. Abner Mares probably landed about 40 low blows in that fight, and I'm not sure if one of them were called. That probably was one of the worst reffing jobs that I've ever seen. That ref should have never been allowed in a professional boxing ring ever again.
Was hitting them low, right? These are three amazing and prime examples of true low blow performances where the punches were straying and strafing really low. But this was like a belt line shot. And what I learned from this fight, especially, Usyk just doesn't like the body work. He just doesn't like it to the...
You can certainly debate that. I'll say this, Usyk definitely did not like some of that body work. At the end of the day, Usyk did show a little bit of weakness for me when he was constantly looking to the ref to save him in some of those circumstances. Now, I think that he adapted to it somewhat well, but at the end of the day, once again, I'm going to be very interested to see if he gets in the ring with Andrew Ruiz or Deontay Wilder or Joe Joyce. some of these guys that can really punch and on top of that have somewhat of skill, you know, because no offense against Dubois, but he was not a guy that was ever going to beat Usyk unless he landed the right blow, you know, when it came down to it. So once again, I'm going to be very interested to see how Usyk would be able to handle that because he was not liking that body work.
Body, that's what that means. So I didn't like how the referee handled this. The referee was way too involved, and then Usyk took a lot of time, like let's say 4 minutes. And then he's like, all right.
Of course, that's what he's supposed to do. Whether Usyk thinks that it was a low blow or not, he's supposed to take that time. If the referee calls it a low blow, you're supposed to take as much time as possible.
I'm good, I'm ready. That should be the end of it. The fighter who allegedly got low blowed is telling you they're ready to continue. And,
you know, once again, Ego and these guys, you know, they love to play the victimization role and all this other shit when it comes down to it. And once again, to say this again, and I know I say this a lot, without, you know, self-responsibility, you know, and sometimes blaming yourself or seeing what you could do to improve the situation, you're never going to improve because when you blame others, you put the power on others to change around you, not you to change around everybody else. And no one's going to change around you the majority of the time because it's not their responsibility to change around you the majority of the time. Or they don't want to, they don't give a shit to. The only person you can really change is yourself. You know, and that's why these guys, because they all have that mentality, instead of telling Deontay Wilder, listen, man, we got to stop making excuses and we got to be real here. You know, you need a little bit of time and you need to probably, you know, learn a couple of lessons first, you know, take some other fights before you get in the ring with Tyson Fury. But they had that self-victimization mentality. So basically they sent Deontay Wilder in the ring for a third time because of their racial pride just to get killed. You know, once again, that was a borderline punch in this fight.
the referee was like, no, go over there. Go to the corner. Take your time.
But also there are referees that will say that and say, are you sure? Are you sure you don't want to take more time? So people trying to act like, you know, that this is just something new. No, that's just not the case. Referees will do that all the time.
You still got a minute left. Like, what are you doing, bro? Like, you didn't get hit low. You get a maximum of 5 minutes. And every boxing thing has a rule. If you get knocked out of the ring, you got like 20 seconds to get back in the ring, right? So if a guy can get back in the ring within 15 seconds, you don't push him back out the ring and say, oh, you got 5 more seconds. I mean, it's literally cut and dry.
Right, but come on, that's something that's completely different. Because when you talk about a knockdown situation, that's something that could be in points for the other guy. You know, overall, you know, when it's a potential knockout, you know, I mean, you still could tell him that when it comes down to it, you know, but the low blow situation when it came down to it, once again, that's a situation where many referees will tell you that you have more time to not possibly screw up the rhythm of the fight.
If the fighter tells you they are good, they're the ones that suffered the alleged low blow. And if they tell you that,
like when you take a look at UFC many times when there's an eye poke, fighters will say, I'm good. And then the referee will say, are you sure? Because you have more time. It happens in boxing all the time. Fighters will get low blowed or something else will happen. And they'll say, are you sure? Because you have more time. You know, so this is not something new that happens. People are trying to act like this was a complete robbery and that, you know, the fix was in and all sort of bullshit. Like, you know, no, I'm sorry.
then you got to just take that and continue the fight. Plus, you got a bunch of fans in the soccer stadium. They want to see the action, so they're not trying to see these massive delays. But anyway, Usyk complained and complained throughout the fight, specifically when it came to body shots. Daniel Dubois throughout the fight was landing some nice body shots, and it had an impact on Lomachenko, and he would just make these faces and stuff like that as if the...
I think you mean Oleksandr Usyk, but I understand what you mean. What I'll say is this. Usyk, and he must have had the same subconscious thought that I had. He did look very similar to Lomachenko in this fight. He fights in a similar way. Now, is he better than Lomachenko? We'll see. Because Lomachenko did have a certain amount of problems adapting, even though, of course, it was in the higher weight classes, of course. You know, but when it comes down, he did have a certain problem adapting to body shots and some of those reaches. So we'll see what Usyk can do against some of those other heavyweight fighters.
punches were strafing really low, but they really weren't. But the referee, another thing I didn't like is he told Daniel Dubois that he's going to get disqualified, as if he was just fighting dirty the whole fight or something like that. The punch in question, really, they should have ran it back like an instant replay, as I mentioned, and it was.
They probably should have, and that's a nice idea. But once again, boxing does not do that.
It really wasn't low. It was like a belt line shot, which is legal. But threatening Daniel Dubois, I think that kind of got in his head, and then he was worried about, you know, the referee, especially since Usyk throughout the fight after that moment, he kept complaining about punches were low.
Right, but we can argue that it got in his head and all sort of stuff. But what that tells me is that Daniel Dubois, at least as a fighter, is mentally weak. It just is what it is. You ended up hurting Oleksandr Usyk. If you think that that was a legal blow in that of the 5th round, you were able to affect him with some of the body shots. You were supposed to take some of that momentum from there and kind of lead on with it. You know, what you have to do, and it's very hard because I myself get trapped in this as well. It's very hard when you're competing and you feel that something isn't going your way or that you got cheated. It's very hard sometimes to get back up on that horse and stay cool, calm, and collective and not get massively frustrated. But that's what you have to try to do because you can lose your focus. And then maybe it did get in Daniel Dubois' head, but at the end of the day, what that tells me is that he's not mentally cut out to be a champion.
And you notice after that moment, throughout the several rounds up leading to the 9th round, Usyk started getting more aggressive, and Daniel Dubois almost was like more tentative, and then he started getting blasted with big shots, rocking his head back and things like that. And then by the 8th round was a pretty bad round for him, and he looked like he was done. And then by the 9th round...
The 8th round, I actually thought that he was starting to put in more work, but Usyk, of course, actually was able to knock him down. And Usyk was able to do a lot of good things within the second half of the fight. So good on him. But once again, I am going to have to see some adjustments in future fights.
He was like mentally checked out. It seemed like oh, I'm just getting beat. So I don't like how Daniel Dubois fought either. I think you have all that size, all that muscle, all that strength, and a lot of the UK fighters, it's like I'm lacking. I'm not seeing the amount of dog when you see fighters from America. When you see fighters from Mexico and Argentina and stuff,
I'm not going to really bring up dog. I mean, I understand what BOXINGEGO is saying. I don't ever like to judge a fighter. Of course, he's also going with Anthony Joshua, and a lot of people will take a look at Anthony Joshua against Andrew Ruiz, and they'll say that he quit, and you can say that he quit, but at least Anthony Joshua, at least he got knocked down like 3 times in that fight and got his ass completely kicked, you know, before he somewhat quit, and he was at least still trying to stand up in that fight. Daniel Dubois did quit in this fight.
See a different level of dog, and Dubois is like Anthony Joshua 2.0, where it's like he's big.
Well, actually, what he is Anthony Joshua about 0.2. That's what he is, and I agree with you to a degree. But 2.0 would basically say that he's the upgrade, that he's the new model version. In a way, he's the new model version, but he's worse than the prior original.
So bound and powerful puncher, and when he's having his way and everything's good, you see the best performance. But when there's a bit of resistance, you got someone like Usyk or whoever that got heart and they're fighting back, Andy Ruiz for Joshua. You see some of these UK British fighters, they don't have that dog mentality almost.
But I'm not going to really say that about Anthony Joshua. I can't say that about him because there are certain fights where he had a little bit of trouble and he was able to fight back. You know, so I can't really say that. Even in his most recent fight against Robert Elenius, you know, Robert was showing a little bit of resilience in that fight, and AJ did, you know, show a little bit of heart. He tried to fight back against Andrew Ruiz. You know, he fought back against that of Vladimir Klitschko. So I can't say that AJ doesn't have heart or that he doesn't have dog. I just think that he was in the ring against 2 fighters that had his complete number, especially Usyk.
And they begin to fold, and that's kind of what I seen from Daniel Dubois, between the ref kind of siding with Usyk with a lot of the calls, and him not getting the 10-8 round, plus Usyk landing like bombs on him in combinations and getting more aggressive, knowing that Daniel Dubois had the power to hurt him. You seen Dubois kind of like really tuck his tail and just let Usyk get off first and things like that. So it started off as a really good fight, but I don't like all the interaction from the referee, to be honest. So it is what it is. Congratulations to Usyk. I think Daniel Dubois, I truly think he quit again. It's the same thing in the Joe Jordan.
I don't necessarily mind him quitting in the first fight. Like I said, I'm not a person that judges quitting in a boxing fight anyway, because these fighters a lot of the times know when they've had enough and they know when they don't feel right in the ring. No one wants to end up like Gerald McClellan or, or Pritchard Colon or, some of these other guys. No one wants to end up like that. So I get it. In the first fight, I kind of get it. But in this fight, yes, I agree. He did quit a little bit more, less honorably.
His fight, when the going got tough, then he mentally checked out. And even when he got knocked down, he's like looking up. He looks like he has his wits about him. Like, if
I agree with that.
Fighter is so badly battered and stuff like that, they can't even think straight. Like, you're separated from your senses. Each time where Dubois' eye was messed up, jacked up with Joe Joyce, and then even in this Usyk fight, it looked like he probably could have continued, but he didn't want to continue because he couldn't figure out the Rubik's Cube. So he just mentally checked out. Tim Bradley also said it. I put it on my Twitter as well in real time. It looked like he quit again. And so, I mean, I said this after the Daniel Dubois Joe Joyce fight. I said he quit and I made a video about it. These are my truest thoughts. And some people got mad. Oh, you don't know. He didn't quit, blah, blah, blah. But you know how people say, once a quitter, always a quitter. Once you find that way to mentally check out and not finish when you're able to finish, then I've seen fighters, they get in that similar situation where the going gets tough. They know that's an option for them, as opposed to,
I agree,
Floyd Mayweather, when the going got tough, he just got.
However, I will say this. I do think that it is possible to mentally break anyone when it comes down to that. Not saying that other guys are willing to quit necessarily, but you will get guys more nervous depending on the fighter that they fight. Certain fighters that have great belief in themselves, like Deontay Wilder, I don't think that he necessarily quit, but I think that he knew more than likely that he was going to lose against Tyson Fury. You could tell by the way that he looked in those prior two fights. So you can get anyone to mentally break, but that's why it's important to be a great all-around fighter and to have great craft, but of course to have great mental fortitude as well.
Tougher, and then relied on his training and his mental fortitude and his resolve to get him beyond those moments. Daniel Dubois found a way out kind of in the Joe Joyce fight, and it's the same thing here. You've seen that with Victor Ortiz as well, like the Maidana fight, the Floyd Mayweather fight where he got two-piece, trying to over-apologize, the Collazo fight. So you see certain fighters, they have these gifts and skills and talents, but your talent, what everybody needs to work on strengthening is their mindset. Because boxing is a tough sport. Usyk even said this to Daniel Dubois, because it sounded like Daniel Dubois post-fight was giving up on himself, and Usyk was like, no, it's a tough sport. You're young, blah, blah, blah. And he was trying to give him a pep talk. But that's the first thing. Before you strengthen your muscles and biceps and triceps and trapezoid, you know what I mean? Before you do all that, and your abs and your calves, you need to strengthen your mindset. And I think there's a lot of UK fighters particularly where that is applicable. Like Joshua, he was used to being the front runner. And then when Klitschko knocked him down, he almost didn't know what to do for several rounds. When Ruiz started fighting back and got up from the knockdown, he couldn't just easily finish him. He started losing every moment of that round.
Well, the reason why he lost the Ruiz fight so bad is because he was so badly out of shape in that fight. Because he didn't expect Ruiz to really be that good as what he was. But I can't really say that about the Vladimir Klitschko fight because he came back to win that fight.
Over time, after the knockdown / low blow thing happened with Usyk, Daniel Dubois just slowly but surely, and Usyk, respect to him, he does have a lot of dog, and he has, he's fighting bigger guys and stuff like that, and he's just meaner. And that's one thing I tweeted, Daniel Dubois got to be meaner. But it is what it is. That's my thoughts, my breakdown. Congratulations, Usyk. I don't know where Daniel Dubois goes from here. You had all that size, big for nothing, and then you hurt him.
As they always say, muscles don't win fights.
I think throughout the fight, but you didn't, you got in your head too much, or whatever the case was, and you didn't believe in yourself, and you let the smaller person kind of dog you. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I'm out.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. I thought that was very particularly interesting. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later, and we'll see where this goes or where Oleksandr Usyk goes from here. Well, anyways, that's pretty much about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.